And we're back, and we just finished watching Brimstone from 2016, rated R, with a runtime of 2 hours and 28 minutes. This movie is directed and written by Martin Koolhoven, and we have the lovely and amazing Zach with us today to discuss this crazy, crazy movie. It's not typical horror, but the story itself is nightmare-inducing, to say the least.
It's harsh, yeah.
Ooh. All right, so we'll start with Zach. What did you think?
Well, it's funny because you say that it's not a typical horror movie, and I think the reason is because of the structure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you structured it straightforward, it is absolutely terrifying.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is this your first time watching it?
Yes.
Yeah. What did you think?
I enjoyed it, but I did, when it went to the chapter 2, and I was like, okay, well, now where are we? What's going on here? Like, there was a disconnect for me a little bit.
Right, yeah, because the story's not told in a linear format. And I think it's interesting because it's such a beautifully shot movie.
Yeah.
It's a beautifully shot movie, and yet it's a horrific story with a very bad man in it.
And I think probably the reason why they structured it the way it did was so that you had those like shocking revelations as you go, because if you told it in a linear fashion, you'd be aware of what
the hell,
like how truly disgusting that man was.
Well, here's one example that I had that I noticed explicitly like during my watch, which is in the first chapter, there's a scene where he's approaching the sleeping Sammy with the knife. And I'm like, how wild would it be if he just murdered this child? Like, that would never happen. But if I had seen the earlier, chronological portions of the movie, I'd have been like, oh, he's absolutely going to kill this child.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
But so this movie's from 2016, so we can spoil it. The whole sequence, which I think is chapter 3 of the Reverend and the wife's relationship, like that was just like, I remember the first time we saw it a couple of years ago. It was on cable a few times, and we caught it the first time, and we were completely just. Well, I was completely unsettled. Let's be honest.
The thing about it was I didn't see this is the first time I've sat through it from beginning to end.
Yeah.
It was just that every time I flipped the channels and it would be on, something really horrible would be happening between these two characters, and like I'd be like, this is terrible. And then I would stop watching it, and then I'd come back the next day or 2 days later, it would be on again because it's cable. And it would be a totally different scene, and something horrible is happening between these two characters. And I'm just like,
God
just
damn.
Die, Guy Pearce, die.
He was like the Terminator of the early 1900s.
I was actually, wondering if he was alive for I guess it would be chapter 1, 1 and on, well, chronologically. Because there's a part in chapter 3 where he says, there's like, someone's like, well, what if you die? And he's like, well, that won't stop me. And when into chapter 2,
he seems to be dead. Yeah.
And the one thing that actually I had in favor of that is the scene in the church with the childbirth. When it goes wrong, she says it was the Reverend.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, well, how would he have done that? But then when you're like, oh, but maybe if he's not.
Yeah.
He's not of this earth anymore or something like that.
It also explains his accuracy, because that dude could shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The scene with the kid.
Oh, God.
That was horrific, too. Yeah, it was interesting because, again, this isn't the typical horror of monsters and ghosts and stuff like that, but sometimes I really enjoyed also, I'm assuming it's the filmmakers kind of ding at, like, zealotry.
Yeah.
Because, let's be honest, historically, religion has done some pretty abominable things.
Pretty big number on a whole lot of people.
Yeah. So, even now, I think people use religion to excuse just pretty barbaric behavior.
Yeah.
Probably not as badly as in past times, but still.
There's a line that where they're in the barn, I believe, where it's Kit Harington's character, I forget what his name is,
Samuel.
And he's saying, anyone who says to turn the other cheek when you're wronged, it sounds like somebody who's in control.
Yeah, yeah. There was a really good performances, and it's funny because Guy Pearce is he's solid. he is
Yeah.
freaking solid. I mean, he's always been one of those guys that I don't know why he doesn't have a bigger, I don't know, pull or
He seems content to be doing like the character roles.
I guess,
you know?
yeah. He's like the other Carl Urban, right?
Yeah.
He's like a lead character actor. Like he gets lead roles, but he feels like a character actor rather than a lead man.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
that's exactly it. And I wonder, it's like to me, I feel like he should be helming bigger stuff.
The only thing I've seen him helm is that Lockout movie where it's
was
like
fun,
Escape
though.
from New York in space.
Yeah,
You know?
that was
Yeah,
fun
that's
though.
Exactly. I saw that
Yeah.
in theaters.
Did you? That's awesome. Yeah, but he's like consistently solid. He is a solid actor, and it's interesting to see him play the heavy.
Well, he's never really like, the
Good.
super good guy. There's,
True.
There's something about
I mean,
his
in that
face.
lockdown movie, he was kind of like fun.
In the
LA
lockdown movie,
Confidential.
yeah.
Yeah. Which one?
LA Confidential.
L.A. Confidential. Yeah, he's like the cop, the lead
I've
cop.
never
But
seen that
that's baby Guy Pearce. That's way back when.
Baby Guy Pearce. Yeah. I was blown away by his performance in this. He is just deliciously, disgustingly evil in this.
I wanted him to die.
I
so
did
bad.
too.
Like,
And it was funny because at the end, I'm like, girl, you better check and make sure
yeah, look
is
out!
nothing but
look out that
ashes.
window and keep shooting.
Yeah.
he really was like the Terminator.
And until you mentioned it, I did not think maybe he was dead the entire time, or like maybe he was like a revenant or something, because he does say things that sort of like make you think that like he's like
He's not of
he
this
says
earth,
he's
yeah.
been to hell. He says
Yeah.
it's not the flames, it's the absence of love.
Yeah,
and it's either he's just jabbering religious nonsense, or he's speaking from experience.
Well, I don't know how you would have survived a throat injury of that magnitude
Yeah.
with the medical technology they had available to them in that
Time, yeah.
Yeah. Plus,
that-
the room was on fire
not just
too.
that time, that location. Like
Yeah.
they were out there.
Yeah, you get a paper cut, you're dead in that time, right?
Yeah, and he found her.
Constantly, right?
Yeah.
And even the little boy was like, he's not going to stop, is he?
Yeah, and
He's
how did
like
he-
the Terminator.
Yeah, how did he catch up with them? Like his horse, he didn't have his horse anymore.
You know what? He was so hell-bent on his mission that he probably couldn't die until he fulfilled it.
It is actually funny that you mentioned the Terminator, because when he first speaks in chapter 1, I was like, what accent is this? And I was like trying to figure out, is he like, my first thought was, is he Cajun? And then it was like, no. And I was like, he sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger, actually.
Yeah. And then just like the reveal of his intentions with his own daughter, like that, I was just like, I think at one point I turned to you during the movie and I was like, I have to take a bath after this. I feel so dirty watching this.
And he had his mind made up. The wife was just like, all right, fine.
I'll have sex with you.
Let's have sex. And he's just like, no,
No,
God
has
has
already
made
made
his
his
choice. Yeah, God made his choice. Sure. It was God.
It was God this whole time.
I want to talk a little bit about the barn. Actually, several barns in this movie, but
Yeah.
the barn where she's hiding the two guys. How long do you think that they were there for?
That's an interesting. And how did he not? Because I mean, I feel like he was on top of this girl. How did he not notice that?
Well, if you notice, she actually even says he never does anything.
Yeah, he never does any of the work, but like it was long enough for her to reach her womanhood, and like for those guys to recover enough to.
Yeah, be better from their gunshot wounds. Yeah.
Well, not only that, to have that epic battle. The only note that I took during this movie was one outlaw hanged another outlaw in an outhouse.
Yeah, this movie was something. Dakota Fanning, wow. It's so funny because, you think of her as a little girl from the War of the Worlds movies or any other kind of like, but she has really come into her own. She's really interesting to watch in this. And even the younger version of her, played by Emilia Jones, also just solid performances. I think that's the Kit Harington Sam character says, who are you? Are you like your mother? And it's almost like in that moment, she decided that she was going to somehow survive this situation. And then things happen, and then she is running in the desert and found by that Asian family who immediately sells it to a brothel. I'm like, wow, this girl can't catch a break.
I know.
God damn. And originally when I saw the movie, I thought Sam was the Reverend's child.
That's because we every time we saw it,
we never
always,
saw it
like,
from the
small
beginning.
bits and pieces, but we never really saw that whole set. Like, I don't think I ever saw like the beginning.
Yeah.
Like chapter 1. I always saw like
I
chunks
think the earliest I caught it was when they find the sheep all slaughtered. I started watching it from that point in one viewing. But yeah, it's still like, and it's funny because again, it's like such a beautifully shot movie.
Yeah,
and the story is just so horrendous. Like the juxtaposition of that is interesting. And like you feel like this story can't get any worse, and yet it does at every turn.
There was one scene that was so like over the top, wow, this is bad, that it like played like comedy, which is the scene where they go and they find her husband, whose name I'm not recalling. And he's like Eli's got his intestines wrapped around his head, and they're all just like, he's like, kill me, and they all like sit around for like 2 minutes like, I don't know, should we kill him?
It's interesting. When I was watching that scene, I almost hoped that she would do that to not allow
put it on the little boy.
Put it on the son Matthew, because I was like, he's always gonna have that memory.
Yeah.
I had to shoot my dad.
Well, always for him was like 3 months or whatever it took him to get.
What did you think? What did you think now that you've seen it from start to finish?
I mean, I liked it. Like I said, it's just the subject matter is really disturbing. Like I remember, like I said, when I was watching it just piece by piece, and every time something absolutely horrible will be happening. Now you see it all together, and like you get the full story and the complete revelations as the storyteller meant to say it with the different chapters. Yeah, it's really good. It's very disturbing. Guy Pearce is loathsome, just absolute scum of the earth, and just the way he plays it. Phenomenally well. And you see him, and this is like another thing, like after, like as time goes by, he definitely becomes more, I guess, like calculating as it goes on in the middle. Because in the beginning, or I guess it's chapter 3 where you see like the past,
Genesis. Yeah.
You could see he's like a sort of twisted religious guy, but he's still kind of, I guess, learning to be a scumbag.
How do you learn that? That's
because like there's like the parts where he's just like he's standing outside the door while the girl's taking a bath, and he's sort of like he's like leaning over and looking through the door, and it looks sort of like he's like contemplating like, yeah, this is what I want. I'm not sure if I'm ready to take that step yet though.
But it's interesting because once he makes his mind to have Joanna fulfill the wife responsibilities, he almost becomes dead. There's a scene in the church. I can't remember if it's the first time you see him in the church, but his eyes almost look all black. And kind of usually when you see it in pop culture stuff, like, for example, like Supernatural, when you have just the black eyes, it's usually because they're possessed by a demon, right? So, and I think there's like a fine line here. There's that picture in the girls' room too that she would always look at, and like there was go ahead.
To speak to the point that he's like learning how to be this evil, just reprehensible person, he says when he comes to her in chapter 2, I'm beyond salvation because he had sex with her before they finished the ceremony, and then he said, I can do whatever I want because I'm going to burn in hell regardless.
Yeah. So he already signed up
from that point on. He was just like, he was an absolute monster. Like his soul was gone, and he was just gonna do whatever he had to do to get her.
But even before that, no, because like when he has the wife like fitted with that metal thing, I'm like, and she's just sitting in church, chilling with the rest of the. I mean, if I was a neighbor, I'd be like, "Okay, what's going on here? Talk to me," because this doesn't.
That old guy sitting next to her is just like, all right.
Like, that's normal? Holy, and she's got like belt straps
Yeah.
on her
What's
face.
interesting about it is, like, in theory, wouldn't the Reverend have to bring his wife to like a blacksmith to get it fitted?
Right.
And then, like, come back in 2 weeks, I'll have it ready for you.
No, that guy he was like same day service. He
Yeah.
hammered that thing out, and it was just like,
put it in her mouth.
5 minutes later, she's like, got it strapped on.
That's crazy. That was crazy. Like, yeah. I mean, he was probably twisted even before.
I mean, if this isn't sort of a spur of the moment thing.
No.
He clearly planned. I need this face hugger for my wife. Should be made out of metal, please.
Jesus.
That's not a spur of the moment decision.
No. He planned that all out.
And the whole congregation's cool with it. And then she kills herself right in the church.
Yeah.
And
That was nuts too.
Nobody is like,
And his almost defiance and anger over it. It's not like the broken husband, like, oh, my wife. I mean, if I was in that church, I'd be like, yo, there's something really disturbing about the Reverend. Like, I know that if it was my spouse, I'd be a mess.
Maybe this guy shouldn't be the leader, the religious leader of our church.
And I wondered too, that scene where like everyone's talking about their, I guess, brush with angels and stuff.
Oh,
how much?
Shit.
I know. I was gonna say, how much of that was made up? She should have just made that shit up. Like, oh yeah, he talks to me in my dreams. His name is Saint. I don't know, Tom.
Was the dude who was like, yeah, pretty much the same.
Yeah. The second guy, he's just like, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, except
but
it was a girl.
woman.
Yeah. Yeah. That was
He
great.
put his own spin on it.
Oh my god. Yeah. Still disturbing. What would you give it? Scale of 1 to 10.
This movie, I'd probably give it like an 8 or a 9. I really like this movie.
Yeah, I really like it too. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, 7 or 8, somewhere in that.
Yeah, I would give it an 8.5. I think it's really good storytelling, really strong script, amazing performances. Guy Pearce, wow. This was like, I mean, again, he's always been such a solid actor, but this to me was like next level.
Creepy.
He was, beyond anything. Like, I think when you have an audience that basically wants to do you bodily harm, you've obviously done your job.
Yeah, I really wanted him to die.
I really wanted him to die as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite scene, Zach?
Favorite scene? The intestines around the neck scene, because without the context, it was just so funny to me, where they were just like, if I were there, I would just be so mad. I'd be like, come on, hurry up.
I'm dying here.
Yeah,
Existence is pain.
He seemed almost like he dealt with the pain, and he was just like waiting for them to kill him. And I was just like thinking, he's dealing with the pain pretty well. Maybe we could just like remove the intestines from around his neck and try and get him back in.
I don't think it works that way.
I mean, he looked okay.
I'm sure he was gonna die.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
guess.
like in a barn. There's probably like fecal
just
matter
pig
all
shit
over
everywhere,
the air and stuff. Oof. Yeah. Did you have a favorite scene?
I don't have a favorite scene. Probably the scene that like really aggravated me to the point where I wanted to just yell at the TV was, God damn it, Harrington, just pull the fucking trigger.
Stop talking.
Stop talking. What are you doing? You just pull the fucking. Why are you giving him this like fancy speech?
Yeah.
And he just twists the arm around, shoots the bolt into his head.
Well, I think my favorite scene, other than seeing a flaming Reverend going through the glass, was, I think, the beauty towards the end of Joanna / Liz ending it all in her own terms. You know what I mean? Like, she saw that Sam was going to be safe. The Reverend was no longer an issue. She had this, like, I guess, successful sawmill going. So she knew that her daughter was okay and being taken care of, and then she just goes into the water.
Yeah.
And I even though it's sad, because it's like, I was really rooting for you to like just persevere. I mean, I guess it had to be this way. She had to be punished for, although she was being punished for something she really didn't do.
True. Yeah.
Which was kind of unfortunate. I'm like, damn it, why didn't you change your name to like Mary or something?
Yeah, that's the thing. There's no birth certificates or anything.
Yeah, like, but there was no way for her to defend herself. She didn't have a tongue or anything. I mean, well, I think when we were watching the film, and after that whole sequence with the real Liz and Frank happened, I turned to you and I was like, she should have just gone to Eli and just been like, oh yeah, I'm Liz's sister. She hooked up with some other guy and she decided to stay there. So I'm like, I came to take her place.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like the marriage broker was really vetting these candidates.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh,
I'll send you a girl.
You're a prostitute? Okay. This guy wants a wife.
Yeah. You can cook, you can clean.
Yeah.
That's all you're really good for.
It was also kind of funny because I was wondering, like, if she showed up with the tongue, is it going to be like, send her back? It's not what I ordered.
Exactly. Yeah. A tongue isn't a bad thing.
I know. So
yeah, it really, really nice looking movie, but just completely unsettling.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get easier, right? I mean, we've seen this movie a few times. Again, not from start to finish, but it's just, it's so fucking creepy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's uncomfortable just seeing someone go through like relentless suffering, and seriously, she had like brief moments of happiness that were always just
shot on.
Doom. Even at the end, it was just like, oh, everything's going great, and then suddenly this dude shows up and he's like, you should have changed your name. And now you're going to hang for a crime you didn't even commit.
Yeah, she was definitely cursed.
Yeah. Something was going on.
Well, it was probably the after effects of being related to the Reverend. Jeez.
Yeah.
That guy was definitely burning in hell. And then, like, at the end, when the daughter is looking in the woods, I was like, oh my God, sweet Jesus, please don't let this guy come out of the woods.
That would have been great. I thought the implication was that the mom was watching over her.
Ah, really?
Yeah, I got that impression more too.
That's kind of that's what the dialogue implies.
Yeah.
If this was the 80s, he would just come bursting out of the lake
with like a mechanical arm, a glass eye.
I got a pretty good laugh out of the scene where like everybody was walking down the hallway with knives at their sides like they were serial killers. In chapter 1.
Yeah. Yeah, really well done. It was interesting. I also found the storytelling choices interesting because it's not told in a linear fashion. So it is a little hard to kind of get into in a way.
Well, I was going to mention this earlier as a hypothetical, like having watched it the way that the director obviously intended it. And you know, I thought it was great the way it was done once I was finished with it. But as a viewer at the time, I was like, why are these choices being made?
Right.
So like having watched it the way it was intended, if there was like a director's like linear cut, would you be interested?
I think I would watch it again just because...
I mean, at this point, yeah, because you know all the secrets.
All the secrets, right, yeah. Right. So it'd be interesting to see it chronologically, how it would unfold. But this was definitely interesting the way he told it, because chapter 1 is Dakota Fanning. Chapter 2 is Emilia Jones. Chapter 3 is also Emilia Jones, right? Or it's half and half, right? Because it's chapter 3 is retribution. No, chapter 3 was Genesis. So she was it was the beginning, the origins, and then the final chapter was retribution. Oh, that was something after. There was a chapter 5.
I think it's half and half in 2.
Yeah.
I think it's half the first, because that's why I was confused at the beginning of 2. I'm like, who is this?
That's right, because Emilia Jones becomes Dakota Fanning.
Yeah,
right.
They show her life in the
brothel. Yeah. And that was also a really nice scene. The scene with, I think I talked to you about this before, the kind of Frank with the father, and the father's like, you ruined I don't have a daughter because of you, and I demand justice, and I'm here as a father because you took it away from me. And like her whole face as she's watching this exchange, she's probably thinking, wow, I had a monster dad, and there are good men out there.
Yeah, I mean, you could, especially in chapter 2, there's a lot of little hints that the relationship is father-daughter, because there's not only that, but there's also the scene where they're walking to the marriage counselor, and there's that creepy douchebag who's just like, what would your fathers think? they'd be rolling in their graves if they could see you right now.
Yeah,
You know, stuff like that. A lot of mention of fathers.
Yeah. Well, this is the worst kind of father. I mean, obviously, there's good dads out there, but Guy Pearce wasn't one of them.
Well, you know, a movie about religious figure, there's going to be a lot of father imagery.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you, if you're looking at this film from like the vantage point of religion, Zach, what do you think?
I definitely don't think has a lot positive to say about it, for sure. Unless they're like, we're seeing like a life of Job sort of scenario where like God is trying this woman and her reward for triumphing is the sweet release of death.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, that's true.
It is the old
Oh,
West.
Book of Job. Book of Job is what I meant to say.
Yeah, and that was another thing that's, I mean, we know this from watching movies set in this time period. It's funny that you said The Revenant before, because that's another movie kind of in this time frame where relentless suffering and just life is cheap. It's weird how cheap life is.
It's basically when there's no social contract anywhere.
Right.
There's no law. There's nothing. You're basically going upon people's goodwill. And back then it was just like, you have my goodwill until it takes food away from my stomach.
Right.
And then all bets are off.
Right, and everything was money. And it was interesting the scene with the Asian family where they sell her. And I thought it was an interesting choice by the filmmaker to not subtitle that, to not let the audience know. I mean, unless you spoke whatever language they were speaking, which I'm assuming was Chinese, but it could have been another Asian language. But it was interesting that the filmmaker doesn't let you know what is being said, but then when you realize what's happening, how horrific that is.
Honestly, as soon as he started talking to the guy on the bar, I was just like, okay, he's selling her to a brothel.
Yeah.
He's not their friend, or he's not
her friend. Yeah.
I don't think the wife looked too happy about it, but I mean, she wasn't going to go against her husband, because that was like another kind of theme in the whole movie. Women were just
supposed to be obedient no matter what,
almost like cattle.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of that, right? I mean, women were property, right?
Pretty
you were
much.
there to breed and do the chores.
I think the only guy who seemed to be nice to his wife was
Eli.
Yeah. You know, I mean, he was like, she's like, we got to get out of here. And he said, okay, we'll go to my dad's cabin. You know, we need to.
And even Sam was decent.
Sam was
to her.
nice, but but he never got a chance to, take her away from this nightmare.
Right.
And he could have taken advantage of her. She was just like, I'm a woman, and he's like, I know.
Yeah, but he wouldn't. Yeah.
And there was like,
but even if he had taken her away, I'm sure the Reverend would have come for them.
Yeah. And one thing that was like sort of interesting about the whole thing with Sam was like when we were talking about the whole in the church, he's like, what did you see? And she's like, I saw a blinding white light, and I saw a man with wings. And when Sam comes into the church, there's like a blinding white light, and he's holding the saddle on his back, and it looks like he's got wings.
Yeah.
And that's what she was seeing.
Like, her savior.
That was her like salvation moment, and then he takes it away.
Yeah. Well, I think the Reverend just took anything good away from Joanna. I don't think he was so consumed. I mean, I don't even know if it was sexual. I mean, obviously some of it was, but it was more than that.
He got it into his head that this was the way it was supposed to be, and he felt justified because Lot slept with his daughters. It's in the Bible, so.
But he also realized that it wasn't good because in the brothel he says, "I'm already going to hell."
That was because he didn't marry her first.
I just figured out how to pitch this movie math to like, if you haven't seen this movie, here's how to describe it. It's the Terminator meets Lolita.
That's not that's not far off. That's actually pretty. That should be the tagline. Seriously. Yeah. That's wow. I didn't even think of that, but that's a pretty good mesh of the story. Yeah, it was really just creepy.
Very.
Yeah. All right, so 7, 8, 8.5. If you haven't seen it, I highly, highly recommend 2016's Brimstone, rated R, 2 hours and 28 minutes, written and directed by Martin Koolhoven. I guess that's how you say his name.
Has he done anything else? I've never heard of this guy.
I've never heard of this guy either, but
he had his name above the title of the movie in the beginning, so it even said Martin Koolhoven's Brimstone.
Mm-hmm.
He's from the Netherlands. I guess he's done a lot of stuff there. I think this is the only movie that he's done here in the States. Everything else looks like it's Dutch. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, and he actually hasn't made a movie since Brimstone. That's the last thing he did.
Interesting.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to see more of his stuff. That's what I'm always saying. Like, I'm so sad that Bill Paxton isn't here because I really loved Frailty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, before we close out, what do you, Zach, how would you define horror?
I think that it depends on the type of horror, but I think most horror is based on psychological issues. Like body horror is obviously like how much it sucks to exist and your own mortality. And then you have slasher flicks, which are about like morality. And I thought personally, like we had discussed previously about Malignant, I thought it was more about the bad thoughts that live in the back of your mind rather than a literal, I won't spoil it, but...
you can. We already did.
A literal twin controlling your brain.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if you look at it through a psychological lens, I think that's where most horror sort of lives.
Yes, agreed. And I think that's the best kind of stories. Like Ray and I were talking about how fantastic Hereditary is.
Yeah.
And that's like such a, I mean, the first 3/4 of that movie are pretty slow, right? And yet that last 20 minutes is just
slow is a very negative term.
Slow.
I would just say you're building this, like, the sense of dread in Hereditary
is constant.
Starts low and then it just keeps going up
Ratcheting
and up and up. It's such a steady pace, but like you said, it's not like this suddenly jump scare.
Right.
It's not that. It just keeps building this tension in your body that when shit goes crazy, you're just like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, and that last 20 minutes is wild. Holy shit.
Yeah, once it kicks off, it really it's 0 to 60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a lot too, like in the mind, right? I mean,
they did such a good job with just the sounds and all of that to the point where, yeah, that fucking noise. Even now, you just made it, and I got a chill.
Mm-hmm.
That damn noise. And like I remember making that noise when I was a kid and it's it's fun.
You'll never listen to that again.
I never want to hear it. Especially in a dark room.
Yeah. Oh, what about stuff like Silence of the Lambs, which is kind of rooted in human evil, right?
Yeah, but Silence of the Lambs never really scared me.
No, but I mean, if you're in
I felt it was more like a thriller.
Sure. And I think this isn't tagged as horror. This is tagged as what is it tagged as? A drama, mystery, thriller.
Yeah.
But I really feel it's more
has
horror.
Horrific elements.
Yeah, I feel it's more horror than anything.
The narrative is horror, but the structure is not.
True. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense, yeah. But I mean, Silence of the Lambs, if you're in that pit, I'm
not saying that people in the film weren't experiencing horror, but as a whole, Silence of the Lambs wasn't a horror movie.
True.
Yeah. Like I said, it was more of a thriller and I guess you could say a mystery, but not really.
No.
Yeah. Because it wasn't like Buffalo Bill was like working for the FBI and it was like, oh my God, it was Buffalo Bill all along.
Yeah.
No, there was the cop hunting the killer and that was it.
Well, there's also the whole Anthony Hopkins relationship.
Well, that was part of the hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it wasn't a horror movie. Like Hereditary is a horror movie. The Ring's a horror movie.
Yeah, that was really good. What about you? What do you think is the best type of horror?
Like that dread horror, like Hereditary. There are so many different types. Like you were mentioning slasher and body horror. But the one that seems to really resonate with me the most is the one that like builds up to this sort of like it's pulling you into a very dark world where you don't know what's up anymore. You don't know what's real. You don't know if your mind is playing tricks on you. You're riding along with these characters. And that's another thing. For that type of horror, you really need a good actor or actress to carry you on that ride. For like slasher movies and whatnot, you screaming, running around. Sometimes even the bad acting makes it even more enjoyable.
Yeah, true. Yeah, didn't AMC have like the Halloween marathon last weekend? We were all we were all in that.
Busta Rhymes beats the shit.
I own Jason Takes Manhattan, so.
Do you really?
Oh god, that was so bad. Like toxic waste gets flushed through the sewer systems every night.
What was the other stupid movie we just? Oh, Leprechaun in the Hood.
Leprechaun in the Hood.
God damn. We gotta write something.
Yeah.
Seriously. They even made a sequel to that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to wrap it up. So that's it from us. If you haven't seen it, absolutely go check out Brimstone, playing on various different platforms. And we bid you all a good night. And thank you, Zach, for coming by and talking with us about horror and crazy and things that are not necessarily go bump in the night, but are just as terrifying, I guess.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks. I hope you come back. We'll do a more lively film the next time. Yeah, this is the stuff of nightmares. All right, that's it for us, and we bid you all good night.
Good night.